O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lowly exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, thou King of nations, bring and into all our suffering bid every pain and sorrow cease, and reign now as our Prince of Peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come again with us to dwell.
Hey there, my name is Darren Calhoun, my pronouns are he, him, and I serve as worship leader at Urban Village Church in the South Loop. I am thinking about the things that we're waiting on today. Advent is about the season of waiting in the liturgical calendars when we prepare and we think and reflect on what we're hoping to see come. And this year we certainly have had to wait for a lot of things, everything from life to go back to whatever is normal or feels normal, to waiting for the new year and hopefully an end to the things that have been painful this year. So whatever it is you're waiting for, I invite you to let these words wash over you in this next song, or if you're bold, sing it out as we declare that we are waiting on God.
The earth cries out, nothing feels right. The world cries out, no justice in sight. Fires burning everywhere, too many, too high, too bright. We are waiting for you. We are waiting for you. We are waiting for that Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo.
The child cries out, don't turn out the light. Broken hearts cry out, no end of hurt inside. Greed and guns rule everywhere. Too many, too strong to fight.
We are waiting for you. We are waiting for you. We are waiting for that Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Oh, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Oh, Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Let us be a sign of hope. Let us be your arms of love. Let us be the ones that say there is another way. Let us be a sign of hope. Let us be your arms of love. Let us be the ones that say there is another way. Let us be a sign of hope. Let us be your arms of love. Let us be the ones that say there is another way.
We are waiting for you. You are waiting for us too. We are waiting for that Gloria in excelsis Deo. Oh, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Oh, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Oh, Gloria in excelsis Deo.
We are waiting for you. You are waiting for us too. We are waiting for you. You are waiting for us too.
I have decided, I have resolved to wait upon you, Lord. My rock and redeemer, shield and reward, I'll wait upon you, Lord. As surely as the sun will rise, you'll come to us, certain as the day appears. You'll come, let your glory fall as you respond to us. Spirit rain, flood into our thirsty hearts again. You'll come, you'll come. We are not shaken.
Greetings, good morning, and welcome. It's exciting to be here with you worshiping today. My name is Grant Swanson, pronouns he, him, his. I'm a deacon serving at Urban Village Church in non-COVID times, particularly at the Wicker Park location. And I'm also a recruitment coordinator at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in Evanston, Illinois. I love being a part of Urban Village Church. We are a community that is deeply rooted in three values. First, we are bold. We're boldly rooted in the gospel message of Jesus Christ. We are not shy in speaking about our rootedness in the gospel message of Jesus Christ and evangelizing that this gospel message is not exclusive, but inclusive, which is our second value. We are a community of beloved children of God precisely because of our diversities and differences, our unique experiences and ethnic, racial backgrounds and sexualities and gender presentations. Those precise uniquenesses are what make us rich and beloved and a tapestry of Christ's community. And lastly, we are relevant. We know that this gospel message of inclusivity is not something that we can keep confined to Sunday mornings. It's something that must be imbued and embedded into our everyday lives, Monday through Sunday, addressing and speaking to all the questions, all the choices, all the motivations, all the interactions we have day to day as individuals and as a community. What a blessing to be a part of this boldly inclusive and relevant community. And with that, we have a mission that really drives and roots the work that we do as Urban Village Church. So, as it comes up on the screen, I encourage you to read the mission statement with me in 3, 2, 1. Urban Village Church exists to create Jesus-loving, inclusive communities that ignite the city. Woohoo! Thanks for cheering with me. And now we can enter our time of announcements. As we get prepared to think about the announcements for the week, I also invite you to visit and submit the Connect card. You can find the link on the screen and in the comment section. This is just a really great way for you to respond to the announcements as well as to connect with us, connect with one of our pastors, and to find out different ways that you can get connected in the Urban Village Church community and dive deep into our values and mission statement and how you can be connected there. So if you are a first-time visitor or you want to learn more about UVC, please fill out the Connect card. There's also an opportunity for folks who aren't first-timers who are with us and want to share some prayer requests. We have a prayer team for folks to have those prayer requests prayed over and to be in our hearts and minds throughout the week. So please fill out the Connect card. There's something for everyone to connect and find ways to find nourishment, spiritual nourishment during this time. And I also encourage you, as you find this time to be nourishing as a time for worship, share this opportunity with others. Go ahead and like however you're watching the video, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook, and also share it within your networks. We want to be a space for people to gather, to worship, to be nourished during this time of a pandemic and social distancing. So please help us do that by dispersing this video to your networks so others can be blessed as well. Our first announcement for today is about the pledge card. During this time of year, Urban Village Church is carefully thinking about the different ways that we have served our communities in which we exist and live within, and how we can continue to serve our communities in the future. And one of the main ways that we think about that is what financial resources we can utilize to better serve our communities. So what we invite you to do is to also be thinking, praying, and discerning how you best plan to use your financial resources in the year to come. Be prayerfully thinking about what you might be able and willing to pledge and provide as financial resources to Urban Village Church to help us serve and live into our mission and vision as a church. So once you are feel comfortable and ready, go ahead and fill out that pledge card so we can think together and plan together as individuals and as a community and as a church how we can financially and resource-wise serve our communities in the future. Our second announcement is actually about many different events. As we are now in the Advent season, we wanted to create a place that has an ongoing list of Advent activities that you can participate and be involved in. So if you follow the link provided, you'll find that exact site of resources to show what events we have coming up. One of the events listed is the Advent Retreat, which is coming up on December 12th at 10 a.m. This will be a wonderful time to come together on Zoom and to participate in some retreat creative activities. We also have the Blue Christmas service coming up on December 17th at 7 p.m., which is an important reminder that the Advent and holiday season is while often joyful, it's also marked with moments of lament and grief and hardship. And we have to have spaces for both of those. We must live into the call, yes, to be joyful and in praise, but also to acknowledge, recognize, and live into our lamentations and grief. The Blue Christmas service is a great opportunity to dive into that and what lamentations and grief look like in worship with God. So those are a couple of our Advent activities coming up, and you can keep posted on other events as they come up via this link. Our final announcement is about our December happy hour. We are having site-specific happy hours throughout this month, which enable us for some time to get together to talk about our life, share about some fun and creative ideas for the holiday season, and really to celebrate our journey and think through and process our journey of 2020. So you can find a link to each happy hour from a site-specific e-news and Facebook page. But just to give a rundown, we have the Wicker Park and South Loop sites are going to be on December 8th, and the Edgewater Hyde Park Woodlawn sites are going to be on December 10th. So that does it for our announcements for today, but one more thing before we move on to the passing of peace. Just a reminder about our Zoom gathering that happens after each service for a time of conversation or reflection. We're going to do a bit of hybridity this week. So after the sermon, we will head over to Zoom for some conversation, but we're going to do some live breakout discussions with your preferred UV site through the specific Zoom link. So follow that link and get connected after our sermon today. Now we are going to go ahead and practice the ancient tradition of passing the peace, a tradition that we learned from Jesus Christ, where we spend the time to turn to those around us, to acknowledge those in our community, and give them a blessing as we connect and greet, say hello, and send one another out into the world after our time of gathering and nourishment. So may the peace of Christ be with you, and please take a moment to share the peace of Christ with others in the comments section below. Peace be with you.
We are waiting for you. We are waiting for you. We are waiting for you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to greet one another and share the peace of Christ in the comment section. It was wonderful to hear from all of you and to connect that way. But now it's time to turn to our time of testimony, our truly sacred and beautiful time in which we get to have the privilege of hearing from a congregant and member of the Urban Village Church community as they share how God has been speaking to them and leading them during this time of their life journey. And today we have the opportunity to hear from a great friend of mine who I've had the opportunity of worshiping with at Urban Village Church Wicker Park and being in Bible studies with, and just have had the wonderful privilege and opportunity to witness her incredible ministry and her place of work in our Urban Village Church community and in her beautiful family. So at this time, let's turn to hear our time of testimony with Sasha Coupe from the Urban Village Church Wicker Park site. Over to you, Sasha.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sasha, and I use she, her pronouns. I worship with my family at Wicker Park, and I just want to share that we miss you guys terribly. I'm really humbled to have this opportunity to share my testimony with you all today. I'm going to start by pointing out what is obvious, certainly obvious to me, I'm sure to everyone else as well, that 2020 has been an incredibly rough year, a dark year. And what we hear is that things are actually about to get darker, that we're about to enter what they say is the darkest period in our public health history as a nation. And I think what wasn't obvious to me at first was how the entry into this dark period coincides with the beginning of Advent, coincides with this period of time where we're asked to slow down, to be reflective, to be contemplative as we prepare for Christmas. I didn't grow up in a family that celebrated Advent, and so this idea of being very intentional and prayerful for weeks in anticipation of Christmas is actually still kind of new to me. I'm really enjoying, all of the ways in which we are inviting our children into a new tradition of approaching Christmas in this way. But in a way, it's, the timing, right, to be reflective and contemplative in anticipation of this joyous event, at the same time that we're being asked to be reflective and to hunker down and to get ready for the worst. I just find those to be interesting, just interesting ways in which we're asked to be in this moment. Again, I said I didn't grow up in a family that celebrated Advent. What was more familiar to me and what sort of feels like it's still ingrained on a cellular level is to fill the days with all kinds of distractions and noise. Turn on the Christmas music, make lists, do crafts, do projects to sort of fill this space with a lot of distraction and a lot of activity, and then just sort of show up on December 25th. And what I'm appreciating not only about Advent, but about the year overall, is that it has forced a stillness into my life that I didn't know I needed. It has forced a quietness that has allowed the still, small voice of God to come through. I didn't realize how much I had been sort of filling the space with noise that crowded out that still, small voice. And so I wanted to share with you two ways in which I see that has shown up for me. The first, it really only occurred to me recently that I think I've captured how best to describe my own experience of this pandemic. I don't know if, sort of using astrophysics is is sort of the way that will make this universal. But for me, it has felt like I have been traveling through space without gravity. I have lost what was or felt like this profound gravitational force that came in the form of all of my daily habits and my routines. Everything from literally getting in the car, getting on the highway, making my way to the parking lot at work, like all those routines just vanished. And with it came the gravitational grounding that those things seemed to be giving my life. And for the longest time, And I think the darkest times for me over the past few months have been the moments when I have felt completely rudderless. And I have to say that when things have felt the bleakest and the darkest, the only thing that has actually got me through was recognizing that at the core, at the gravitational center, is God. And I know that isn't particularly profound, but for me, that is. I think I have thought of myself as someone whose, goals have been the thing that have kept me going, without, again, acknowledging that at the core of all of this is something so much bigger, so much more profound, and it's God. I am actually appreciative that not only has Advent sort of brought that into sharp relief by forcing me to slow down and be reflective, but so too has the pandemic forced me to sit and be still, sit and be reflective, to sit with and accept all of the uncertainty that comes with being human and living in this very fractured human world, and to wait in anticipation with joy, with hope, with peace, with love, all of those facets of Advent, I just see as applicable across this entire experience that we've been collectively sharing. The other way in which I think the minimal distractions, the quieting and the reflection has brought into my life or change into my life has been actually around giving. I have always been a person whose giving has been touched and shaped by guilt. There's so much to say about that, but I think in a way I've been prompted to be generous, but really motivated not by just a grateful heart and not always with an understanding of just that giving as purely an expression of God's love without any guilt attached to it. And I had an opportunity recently that I don't think I would have paid attention to in the before times. An opportunity to give. It was the most amount of money that I'd ever given to a perfect stranger. I'd met this person actually on 2 occasions and was so moved by his situation that I didn't hesitate. And there was just no guilt attached to it. There was joy. And I don't know why that one simple act of giving has so sort of stood out for me as profound, but it holds for me the hope that that's what my giving can look like and can generate, and that maybe actually also in asking others to give, I might be able to share that joy with other people. So that's just 2 ways in which I think I've tried to extract something good from the bad. I know there's more to come, and I'm just really hopeful. I'm just really hopeful as we approach a dark time, that God's grace is this light that shines. And that's all I need.
My name is D'Angelo Smith, and if you refer to me, you can refer to me with they, them pronouns. I am ecstatic to be your new site pastor of High Park Woodlawn and Wicker Park sites. I would like to thank Sasha for allowing us to enter her world through story and testimony. Thank you, Sasha. We have all been strengthened by your story and testimony today. Now, let us all pray for Sasha today. God, we thank you for the journey we walk and that we do not walk alone. We thank you for your transformative work in each of our lives and the gift to witness that same work in others. Help us to see and share the ways that you are moving in our own lives so that others might also be strengthened for the journey. Amen. Once again, thank you, Sasha. Now, let's look to the Word of God and let us hear. Luke 1:26-45. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary, and he came to her and said, "Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with you." But she was perplexed by his words and pondered what sort of greeting this might be. The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And now you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give to him the throne of his ancestor David. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end." Mary said to the angel, "How can this be since I am a virgin?" The angel said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be holy. He will be called Son of God. And now your relative Elizabeth, in her old age, has also conceived a son, and this is the 6th month of her who was said to be barren. For nothing will be impossible with God." Then Mary said, "Here I am, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." Then the angel departed from her. In those days, Mary set out and went with a haste to a Judean town in the hill country, where she entered the house of Zachariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the child leaped in her womb. And Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit and exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? For as soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leaped for joy. And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Good morning, Urban Village. My name's Lijia, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm overjoyed to be serving as one of your student pastors for the year. This week, I'm excited to be continuing our Advent series on the treasures of darkness. To start out with a little bit of a recap, last week, my fellow student pastor Sam introduced our series by challenging us to reconsider what we think of darkness. We considered how so often in our lives, and even in the Bible, darkness represents evil, harm, chaos, and all manner of negative things. Whereas its opposite, light, is often thought of as goodness, purity, warmth, life. As Sam noted, it's important that we realize how this dichotomy, this binary metaphor, is easily perverted in its application to human bodies. giving birth to hatred and denigration and dehumanization of black and brown bodies. But this isn't God's understanding of darkness, nor was it the prophet Isaiah's, nor should it be ours. Because, as the prophet says, God both formed light and created darkness. Darkness is itself an essential part of creation. That is to say, darkness is good, holy, divine, and as the prophet says, full of treasure. Today, we turn to the beginning of the Advent story as it is presented in the Gospel of Luke. The angel Gabriel appears to Mary, confounding her with a promise of God's favor and foretelling her pregnancy by the Holy Spirit. Upon receiving this news, she sets out hastily to her relative Elizabeth, who has also experienced something oddly similar in the verses preceding this passage, and who is herself pregnant with a son who will be John the Baptist. Together, they celebrate with great joy these unexpected blessings of the Lord. Uniquely among the Gospels, Luke opens his telling of Jesus' story with two women as protagonists, each blessed with a miraculous, yet complicated and possibly scandalous pregnancy. While we'll return a little later to the important implications of this, I want to draw our attention first to these pregnancies and to these women's wombs as a crucial image for our theme this morning, that darkness nurtures and darkness grows. Just as it was in the beginning that God created the heavens and earth, and they were formless in the void and the dark, so too at the beginning of each of our lives do we exist formless in the void and dark of our mother's wombs. It is within this darkness, however, that we are beautifully made. Over the course of 9 months, a symphony of intricate molecular, cellular, biological processes conducted by God, performed in unison to create our wondrous brains and bodies. As the psalmist beautifully writes, "For you, God, formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. It was in secret I was made, intricately woven in the depths of the earth." And, as the Gospel tells us this morning, Jesus' own entrance into creation happens this very same way. As we read in Luke chapter 1, verse 30, the angel Gabriel tells Mary, "Don't be afraid. You've found favor with God, and behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus." Gabriel continues, telling us and Mary that this baby boy will be the Son of the Most High, who reigns over the house of Jacob forever, whose kingdom shall have no end. That Jesus, in all his greatness and glory, arrives in the darkness of a womb is an unambiguous testament to darkness's beauty and goodness, to its unbounded potentiality. It was in the darkness of the womb that the very Word of God was made flesh. And it is in this same beautiful, rich darkness that each and every one of us also began our myriad lives and journeys. If this were not enough proof, the rest of nature also testifies to the growth and nurturing qualities of darkness. Science has shown us, for example, that the darkest soils contain the richest resources for growing crops, because the darkness literally indicates death, or the presence of decaying organic matter that fertilizes the soil and returns nutrients from whence they came. A similar notion is true when we think about plants and vegetables themselves. We know that the darkest greens of plants contain the most nutrients vital for our survival. And something that I often failed to appreciate back when I went to the gym in times long ago is that while muscles may be broken down by exercise, their regeneration and strengthening actually happens most acutely at night, in the darkness while we sleep. Indeed, sleep is one of the most valuable things we can do. Research has shown that our immune response and physical health can be severely impacted by a lack of sleep. And it's during sleep, in the dark of the night, that long-term memories are formed, that new skills and learning are ingrained, that emotions and experiences are processed, and that we are renewed and restored for the next day. God's good creation shows us beyond a shadow of a doubt that we cannot live or grow without the dark. Now, while in this contemplation of nature and biology, we might start to recognize darkness's goodness and benefits, when it comes to more abstract or intangible things within ourselves or our lives, things like being a better person, whatever that might mean for each of us, or achieving goals, or fighting injustice, the ways in which darkness helps us to grow in these areas isn't so clear. Particularly in our individualist, action-oriented culture, which prizes productivity and efficiency, growth is so often defined by what we do, what actions we take, and what decisions we make. Just think of the way we talk about self-improvement or self-help, the kinds of strategies we're encouraged to use, like setting goals or forming habits. Implicit in this kind of thinking is not only a desire to control outcomes, but a value system which tells us in some ways that goodness and growth only exist when our actions determine their outcomes. In the darkness, though, we no longer know where we're going. Control is wrested from our hands, and often we cannot plan or decide or act in the ways that we're so used to. Instead, we might be forced to be still, and in our stillness, we find it hard to imagine that we're still growing or progressing. We find it difficult to trust in the continued presence and sovereignty of God. I think this sensation is probably all too familiar to us right now, not only because of the recurring dark coldness of Chicago winters, which usually keeps us indoors, but also given that this year many of us are locking down and staying home, doing our part, importantly, to combat the ongoing pandemic. It's easy to feel like these are moments to endure until the light of a new day or a new year might compel us or allow us once again to move, to do, and only then to grow. But I believe today's gospel story and the images of darkness we've already considered reveal the flaws in this way of thinking. The darkness of the womb and the darkness of the night show us that in many aspects of our lives, we are being grown and being nurtured, independently of any of our own efforts or actions. God is still working in mysterious but wondrous ways all around us. Though Jesus is incarnated into the world to be the central agent in God's redemptive plan for creation, to be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, for at least the first 9 months of his life, just like the rest of us, he was fully dependent on Mary to carry and to care for him, dependent on God to continue carrying out God's redemptive plan through others, despite Jesus' own stillness. In my own life, I found that I have experienced God's faithfulness most keenly, or at least been aware of it most keenly, in moments when I felt like I was in some ways still and in the dark. For example, in college, frustrated with the Christianity that I grew up with, I decided to take some time away from participating in church or Christian communities. Yet almost every time that I took a bus or train home for the holidays, I managed to bump into someone whom I knew through church, whose joy and kindness reminded me that God was still working in the world around me. I want to encourage us all to embrace darkness and stillness in this Advent season as an invitation, during which time we might better attune ourselves to God's movement and allow ourselves to be nurtured and grown in the dark, in God's infinite grace and love to renew our trust and faith in God. Finally, while I believe darkness invites us to stillness, it's important to note that it doesn't force stillness upon us, nor require it of us. In our story this morning, there's actually a flurry of movement and activity in unexpected places. We're told in verse 41 that when Elizabeth hears Mary's greeting, the baby leaps in her womb. The Greek word for leap here, skertao, is used in the New Testament only by Luke twice in this passage in reference to John's leaping in Elizabeth's womb, and once in reference to in Luke's beatitude about persecution in chapter 6, verse 23. There he writes, as Jesus says, "Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven." We see in the connection between these two usages that the ways in which we can still act in the face of seeming obstacles are to act in the spirit of joy. In both cases, freed from the burden of our own expectations and desire to be in control, we find in the darkness that God is always in control. Let us rejoice then in this understanding. Moreover, as I mentioned earlier, in this morning's passage, Mary and Elizabeth are in some ways the protagonists. One a teenager, the other an older, previously childless wife of a priest. Both, importantly, women. While children and childbearing were often, in their time, the only source of a woman's worth or agency, in this case, their pregnancies are a bit more complicated. Both of their experiences and specific circumstances would likely have been considered scandalous or shameful. Yet the story gives them power and independence in other ways. Luke tells us that Mary undertakes this long journey from Galilee all the way to Judah, seemingly alone and possibly in the darkness of the night. Mary and Elizabeth are both given voice in a time and a culture where women so often had no voice. And they meet alone with no men present because they are in this moment the chosen actors through whom God is working. How great and mysterious, O God, are your ways to us. Let us embrace this darkness so that in its stillness may we come to notice and know you and your miraculous work. In this season of darkness at the beginning of Advent, I want to invite us once again to be still, to be grown and nurtured by the infinite, unbounded richness of the dark. Just as we once were in the womb, just as we still are by the soil and by the night. Then, after this stillness, when we finally do move, I invite us to do so with the spirit of Mary and Elizabeth, as well as eventually their sons, Jesus and John, knowing that we are liberated by God's grace from anxiety about where we are or where we're going, knowing that we can trust in God, knowing that God has been, is, and always will be faithful. Let us kick and leap as babies in the womb, rejoicing in the freedom that God's darkness and grace brings. Today and always, let us rise like Mary does, and like one day Jesus will, sing to God, yes, God, yes. Not our will, but yours be done. Amen.
Hi, my name is Chan Choi. My pronouns are he, him, his, and serving Edgewater and South Loop as a site pastor. It's a time for offering, which is a way to express our gratitude and thanks to God, and also a way to respond to God's invitation of joining the mission that we have received individually and as a community. You can find a way to give online and offline on the screen. As you know, during this stewardship season, we encourage you to submit the pledge card for the next year. For those who are not familiar with this term pledge, it is about how you are going to support this community of faith financially and spiritually next year. And it is a huge help for the church to make a plan ahead. And our goal is to have 185 households make a pledge, and we have 44 households so far. I know it's not easy to make a pledge this time because of uncertainty that we have experienced this year. So we may need more time of prayer to make this decision. Even though you're not ready to fill this form out now, I encourage you to visit and check this form by clicking bit.ly link on the screen. In the middle section of the form, there is an optional space where you can share your story. How has your life been changed by God through Urban Village Church? It could be a good guide question to make this decision of giving a decision of your commitment for this community financially and spiritually. Again, thank for your generous and faithful heart and support.
I have decided, I have resolved to wait upon you, Lord. My rock and redeemer, shield and reward, I'll wait upon you, Lord. As surely as the sun will rise, you'll come to us, certain as the day appears. You'll come, let your glory fall as you respond to us. Spirit rain, flood into our thirsty hearts again. You'll come, you'll come. We are not shaken.